Hello! Do you want to join the counter-revolution? Share love, not hate. Recently, Jessica and I were having a wonderful dinner with some of our kids and their spouses. The meal was excellent, but when it was time for dessert, nothing caught our attention. That's when someone in our party said, I'm almost ashamed to admit this, but my favorite dessert in the whole world is a Dairy Queen dipped soft serve. We laughed. Dipped in what flavor? Butterscotch. And just like that, we had a mission. I pulled out my phone, found the nearest Dairy Queen, and off we went. And I don't step into Dairy Queen often, maybe once every few years, but this wasn't really about ice cream, it was about joy. The small, simple pleasures that somehow feel larger when shared. When we arrived, we discovered that the butterscotch dip had been discontinued. There was real disappointment, but we ordered chocolate-dipped cones and survived. It became an inside joke. We laughed and moved on. But the real treat of the night wasn't the ice cream. It was the woman behind the counter. She was remarkable. A young, black woman with the friendliest face and the warmest energy. She wasn't just doing her job. She embodied something rare. Enthusiasm, presence, and kindness. I decided to tell her. And I said, my God, you are amazing. She paused, startled. Really? Yes, you're so kind, you're so fast, and so good at what you do. She lit up. I could see it instantly. Those words mattered. And that moment stayed with me. You see, oftentimes, fast food service feels rushed or indifferent. Sometimes because workers are stretched thin. Other times because the job itself is transactional by nature. But this woman, she changed the energy of the space simply by being herself. And that moment lingered in my mind. What if we were all a little bit more intentional about the energy we bring into this world? What if we saw every interaction, not just business or online, but the smallest everyday moments, as an opportunity to contribute something meaningful? What if we were as mindful of what we put out as we were of what we consume? Because just as negativity spreads, so does warmth. And in a world overflowing with noise, maybe the most radical thing we can do is choose what we amplify. So, curating not just what we consume, but what we share. And I've written before about the importance of curating what we consume, whether it's the food we eat, the folks we surround ourselves with, or the facts we absorb. But there is another side to the equation, one just as critical. The responsibility we have for what we put out in the world. Many people today carry a low-grade sense of anxiety about what the world and where the world is heading. We feel the currents of massive change, some hopeful, some uncertain. But beyond the uncertainty, there is something else gnawing at us. The feeling of powerlessness. The sense that so much is happening beyond our control. One of the most overlooked sources of power we do have is the energy we bring into the world. Our attitudes, our words, and our presence. What we contribute, whether in conversation, online, or in daily interactions, has a ripple effect. And in a world that often defaults to fear and negativity, we have an opportunity, and I would argue, a responsibility to be more intentional about adding something constructive, something that uplifts rather than erodes. I believe we have far more power in this regard than we realize. Imagine if every person committed to small acts of kindness each day, offering a smile, a moment of patience, or a warm greeting. If kindness became as habitual as checking our phones, imagine the world we'd wake up to. Of course, some people already live this way. And when we encounter them, whether it's a kind stranger, a thoughtful waiter, or compassionate police officer, it's striking. It reminds us what's possible. Perhaps more than that, it reminds us of what we do, too, are capable of. Because whether we acknowledge it or not, every single one of us is an influencer. Not in the way social media defines it, but in the most fundamental sense. Every glance we exchange, email we send, an interaction we have leaves an imprint. Our phones are arguably the most powerful tool ever created, and they have expanded our influence exponentially. With a single post, comment, or share, we aren't just voicing our opinions, we're shifting the emotional landscape around us. Which is why we should ask ourselves, are we being intentional with that power? With each interaction, on or offline, we have a choice. Am I contributing to love? Am I adding to a sense of optimism and possibility? Or am I doing the opposite? Criticism versus contempt, where we've gone wrong. Let me be clear. I am not saying we should avoid hard conversations. Some battles are worth fighting. Some questions need to be asked. Some truth must be confronted. Not everything in life should be soft, sweet, and tied up in a bow. But somewhere along the way, we lost our balance. Criticism became the default, relentlessly searching for flaws, exposing failures, tearing down rather than building up. While critique has its place, something is missing. It needs a counterweight, appreciation. This is why people turn to sports, music, and art, to spaces that celebrate human potential, that reminds us of what's right in the world. We need those outlets because if we only look at what's broken, we lose sight of what's beautiful. This is a risk we can't afford to take, and each of us has a role in tipping the balance. When we choose to spend time with those who create, uplift, and contribute, we start to absorb that mindset. Positivity is contagious, and small shifts in individual behavior over time create a cultural shift. The question is, which direction are we shifting it in? The athletic posture, being present and intentional. I grew up playing many sports. For the longest time, I've been in and around really good golfers, trying my best to help them improve their game, and occasionally my own. In any sport, whether it's in golf, skiing, or tennis, you need the right posture. And it's just not a physical one. It's also very much a mental one. You must be ready. You can't be rigid, afraid, or waiting to get hit. You have to be balanced, flexible, engaged, and present. We need to approach life the same way. Open to the moment, adaptable to what comes, grounded in ourselves. It's saying, I'm here, I'm ready, I'm aware, not hiding behind a shield, armored up, or disengaged out of fear. You simply can't win that way. In fact, you can't even play. If we want to engage with the world, really engage, we must be available to the game. And in this case, the game is life. But too often we walk around armored up, bracing for the next hit. Lena Endre, a Swedish actress I admire, once spoke about the price of a defensive attitude. She said, quote, "It's in the point of pain that we humans can recognize ourselves. It is there that we can feel compassion. And when you see it in someone else, you cannot dislike that person because then you understand. If we only build up our defenses, we will eventually see only a bunch of enemies everywhere. Then the world falls apart." End of quote. She's right. It's exhausting. And it's the opposite of the athletic posture. Open, present, and engaged. Another aspect of athletic posture is being fully present, to be all in, to be ready, to have complete focus. But a big myth in our culture is the belief that we can multitask our way through life, that we can juggle multiple things at once without losing focus. Our phones have become weapons of mass distraction. It is so tempting to just answer that text, look at that post, or comment on something fun while thinking you're focused on the task at hand. Many years ago, I came across the work of social psychologist Linda Stone, a former Apple and Microsoft executive who coined the term continuous partial attention to describe what's actually happening. Unlike true multitasking, where you combine tasks that don't require the same type of focus, like cooking while listening to a podcast, CPA is a state of constant mental scanning. It's the habit of bouncing between emails, notifications, and headlines, constantly searching for the next thing. It feels productive, it feels like staying connected, but in reality, it's fragmenting our attention, draining our focus, and exhausting us. We're never fully anywhere, never fully with each other. The problem is you can't be partially present. You either are or you aren't. Instead, we're all trying to do too much at once, and in the process, we're less present, connected, and alive in our own lives. Athletes understand this. You don't see runners stepping into the track wearing their iPods. Sure, they may warm up with music, but when the race starts, they're fully present. They know that you can't be at your best if you're distracted. Adopting an athletic posture is a commitment to being aware, engaged, and ready for the moment. Fully tuned in, not halfway present, not halfway alive. The power of the pause. If continuous partial attention weakens our ability to focus, emotional reactivity weakens our relationships. In a world of instant responses, email, texts, online debates, it's easy to fire back in the heat of the moment. But reaction isn't the same as engagement. That's why I've developed a simple habit, the 24-hour rule. When something upsets me, an email, a comment, a situation that triggers an immediate emotional reaction, my instinct is to respond right away, and many times I have. To fire off a reply, to set the record straight. But more often than not, I stop myself. Instead of sending the email, I save it in my drafts folder. 9 times out of 10, I don't send it at all. The act of writing it out is therapeutic enough. When I revisit it the next day, I almost always realize it's just not worth it. Sometimes, instead of letting it sit in my draft, I call the person the next day and say, "Here's how I felt when you sent that. I just wanted to share." Other times, I do respond, but it's different from what I originally wrote. And many times, I simply let it go. It's a small practice, but it's made a big difference in my life. My dear friend, Dov Seidman, founder of the How Institute for Society, often speaks about the pause, offering the insight that, quote, unlike machines which stop when they pause, humans start. We reflect, rethink, and reimagine, end of quote. His idea is that in an age of relentless speed, automation, and data-driven decision-making, pausing is a deeply human act that allows for moral reflection, creativity, and meaningful leadership. He argues that leaders and individuals who take the time to pause can make more thoughtful, ethical, and impactful decisions, something machines cannot do. So, ode to the pause. And the power of kindness and the risk of contagion. Years ago, I was invited to meet a restaurant owner-operator who had been written off by others. People in our network said he couldn't run a good restaurant, wasn't listening to feedback, and was simply too negative. At the time, my boss, who was also my mentor and CEO, decided to meet with him, not to criticize, not to reinforce what everyone else had already said, but to ask a simple question. How can we help? Something unexpected happened. He He opened up. He wasn't defensive or dismissive. He was engaged, thoughtful, and receptive. Over the following few years, he changed. He became more adept at listening, adjusting, and his business grew. At some point, my boss circled back to him and asked, "What changed?" His answer has stayed with me ever since. And he said that before becoming a restaurant owner-operator, he had spent years as a child psychiatrist. Parents would often ask him, "Is it okay to discipline my child? How do I know if I'm being too tough?" And he always gave the same response. It is absolutely okay to discipline your children, but only if you're absolutely sure they know that you love them. That distinction is profound. Criticism and feedback are essential. A healthy society depends on our ability to say, "This could be better." But somewhere along the way, criticism stopped being about improvement and became about blame. The shift has been subtle but corrosive. It's moved from "we can make this better" to "you are the problem." When that happens, when critique turns into contempt, it ceases to be productive and instead destructive. That's where we are now. A world where so many of our conversations, political, cultural, even personal, are laced with an undercurrent of hostility, where the message isn't "let's figure this out together, but I win if you lose." What kind of world does that create? So the choice we face. I want to contribute to something different. A culture where kindness isn't about avoiding hard conversations, but about how we approach them. True kindness isn't soft. It isn't passive. It's an active force, one that seeks to build rather than tear down. Kindness in its proudest, purest form is a belief. I believe in a better way. Will you meet me there? Instead, too often today's message sounds more like, "I hate you, you're on the wrong team, and my job is to make sure you lose." That's a framework we must break because we're not on opposing teams. We're all wearing the same jersey, whether as citizens of a country or simply as human beings sharing this planet. Thomas Di Leva, a talented Swedish poet and musician, once said beautifully, "There is only one religion, love, and there's only one race, humanity." That's really all we need to know. If we take that seriously, then our responsibility, our starting point, becomes clear. Pour your heart and love into whatever room you step into, whether digital or physical. Show up with as much of your humanity as you can, then engage, then have the conversation, then take it to where it needs to go. Also, in that process, resist the urge to reduce people to labels, assume they are simply human and want the same things that you do. If we can start there, we have a chance. So before putting something out into this world, it's worth asking, does this add value? Venting is natural and healthy. In the right places, with a spouse, a best friend, in private, go for it. There are moments when I need to process, reflect, and find a better interpretation of what's happening. That's normal. But public negativity is different. What we put into the universe carries weight. Every share, every like, every retweet signals agreement. And that approval matters. It gives ideas momentum, legitimacy, sometimes even credibility they don't deserve. You may be unintentionally amplifying something that isn't even true. What if the content you saw and reshared had been designed to provoke rather than inform? But then it's too late. Once you share, you've given this idea legs, a life of its own. Unlike a fleeting conversation, once something is posted online, you can't take it back. Your voice holds influence, sometimes much more than you realize. A simple endorsement, intellectual or not, intentional or not, can shift perception. Which is why we need information hygiene, a way to step back, set boundaries, and manage our digital habits. For me, that means spending less time online and more time in real life, near the water, in nature, anywhere that pulls me away from the endless stream. It also means exposing myself to different viewpoints, breaking out of the echo chamber. The goal isn't to disengage, it's to engage wisely, to be mindful of what I consume and what I contribute. If people truly embraced the contribution pledge, the impact would be exponential. Warren Buffett calls compounding interest the eighth wonder of the world because small, consistent actions create massive change over time. For example, if you save $20 a day starting at age 25 with a 7% annual return, the habit growth to over $1.5 million by the time you turn 65. Now apply that same principle to the energy we put into the world. Imagine if every interaction, online, in person, in business, was just 1% more intentional, more thoughtful, more constructive. The world isn't suffering from a lack of intelligence, innovation, or resources. It's suffering from a lack of intention in how we treat each other. That's the real challenge, and the solution is in our hands. Take the contribution pledge, please. I invite you to take the contribution pledge, a commitment to being more mindful of what we share, amplify, and contribute, recognizing that our contribution shaped the world. The pledge is simple. 1, I will be intentional about the energy and ideas I contribute. 2, I will amplify content that uplifts, informs, and inspires, not content that divides or degrades. 3, I will engage with different perspectives with curiosity, not contempt. 4, I will prioritize real human connection, both online and in person. And lastly, before I share, I will ask, am I making the world better or worse? A mentor once told me, before you speak, ask yourself, does this improve on silence? If not, maybe it's better left unsaid. There is enough noise in the world. Let's be intentional about what we add to it. Will you take the contribution, please? Pledge. Take it now, here, and I'll share the results in 2 weeks. I so hope many will commit to making a difference because, as I say repeatedly, it's the only thing that will change the world. See you.